The sun was hot that morning in Freetown, but Zainabu Kamara felt cold inside. She stood near her father's grave, holding her small black purse with both hands. At just 22 years old, she had already lost the only person who ever truly protected her. Around her, people were crying loudly. Some women wailed. Some men wiped their eyes. Everyone talked about how kind and successful her father had been. But Zainabu did not cry. Her face was calm, almost empty, like her heart had gone silent. She wore a simple black dress. No jewelry, no makeup, no signs of wealth. If anyone looked at her, they would think she was just a poor, quiet girl who had lost everything. And that was exactly what she wanted them to believe. Not far from her, her stepmother, Mariata Kamara, stood like a queen at her own ceremony. Her clothes were expensive. Her head wrap was perfectly tied. She moved from group to group, accepting hugs and sympathy like she was a celebrity. "May his soul rest in peace," she said again and again, her voice soft and dramatic. But between those words, she whispered to people, "Now everything is in my hands. He left me well." She smiled too much for a grieving wife. Zainabu heard every word. She watched as Mariata talked about houses, cars, and land, even before the soil had settled on her father's grave. Some relatives nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. But no one said anything. Neither did Zainabu. She lowered her eyes and stayed silent. Because deep inside, she was carrying a secret so big, so powerful, that if anyone knew it that day, the whole funeral would have turned into chaos. And she was not ready for that yet. After the last prayer was said, and the grave was covered with red soil, people slowly began to leave. Some hugged Zainabu. Some whispered, "Be strong." Others were already busy following Mariatu, who was planning what food would be served at home. Zainabu walked behind everyone, quiet as always, her head down, her hands tight around her purse. Just as she reached the gate of the cemetery, a deep voice called her name. "Zainabu Kamara." She turned. A tall man in a dark blue suit stood a few steps away. He looked serious, calm, and respectful. His glasses reflected the sunlight. "I am Mr. Sori Conte," he said gently. "Your father's lawyer." Her heart skipped. She had seen him only a few times before, always sitting beside her father in important meetings. He never joked. He never wasted words. When he spoke, people listened. "I need to talk to you." "In private," he added quietly. Zainabu looked around. Mariata was busy laughing with some relative. No one was paying attention to her. She nodded. They walked to a small shaded area under a big mango tree, away from everyone. The noise of people faded. For the first time that day, it felt peaceful. Mr. Conte opened his leather bag slowly and brought out a thick brown envelope. It was sealed and stamped. "This is for you," he said, handing it to her. She hesitated. "For me?" "Yes," he replied. "Your father instructed me to give this only to you, after his burial, and only when you are alone." Her fingers trembled as she held the envelope. "He trusted you more than anyone," Mr. Conte continued. "He knew some people around you do not have good intentions." Zainabu swallowed hard. Then he leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Your father was very smart," he said. "He invested in mining companies, mobile networks, and internet projects across West Africa. He also saved money in secure local and offshore trusts." She stared at him, confused. "How much?" she whispered. Mr. Conte looked straight into her eyes. $50 million. Her breath stopped. $50 million? She repeated. "Yes," he said calmly. "It all belongs to you. Legally. Every dollar." Her knees felt weak. She had been sleeping in a small room, wearing old clothes, eating leftovers, while she was secretly one of the richest young women in the country. Mr. Conte placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Do not tell anyone," he warned. "Not yet. Protect yourself first." Zainabu nodded slowly. She held the envelope close to her chest. And for the first time since her father died, she realized something important. She was not helpless. She was powerful. After the funeral, life changed very fast for Zainabu. The big house that once felt warm and safe suddenly became cold and unfriendly. Her father's laughter was gone. His voice was gone. And without him, Mariata showed her real face. On the first night back home, Mariata stood in the living room with her arms crossed. "From today," she said sharply, "you will no longer stay in that room upstairs." Zainabu looked confused. "But that's my room. Baba gave it to me." Mariata laughed, not in a funny way, but in a cruel way. "This is my house now," she replied, "and I decide who stays where." She pointed toward the back of the house. "You will sleep in the servant's room." Zainabu felt her heart sink. The servant's room was small, hot, and dark. One tiny window, a thin mattress, no fan, no cupboard. It smelled of dust and old soap. That was where she was sent, like she was nothing. From that day, everything got worse. Her monthly allowance stopped. Before, her father used to give her money for school, clothes, and transport. Now, Mariata gave her nothing. If Zainabu asked for even small money, she would shout, "You are too old to depend on me. Go and suffer like others." "Do you think money grows on trees?" Sometimes, Zainabu went to bed hungry. Mariatu also made sure to insult her every day. If Zainabu washed dishes, it was too slow. If she cleaned the house, it was too dirty. If she stayed quiet, she was stupid. If she spoke, she was rude. Nothing was ever good enough. When relatives visited, Mariatu acted like an angel. "Oh, this girl," she would say loudly. "She is so lazy, so ungrateful. I try my best for her, but she doesn't appreciate anything." Some aunties shook their heads. "Poor Mariatu," they said. "She is trying." Zainabu stood there, smiling weakly, saying nothing. Inside, she was breaking. At night, in her small room, she cried quietly into her pillow so no one would hear. She missed her father. She missed feeling safe. She missed being loved. But she remembered the envelope. She remembered the truth. She was not useless. She was not poor. She was not weak. She was waiting. And one day, everyone would know it. One evening, Zainabu was washing plates in the kitchen when she heard Mariata's phone ringing in the living room. Mariata answered quickly and walked outside to the back veranda. She thought no one was listening, but Zainabu was. She dried her hands slowly and moved closer to the door, pretending to arrange some cups. The night was quiet. Only crickets and distant traffic could be heard. Then Mariata's voice came clearly. "Yes, yes. I told you already," she said in a low tone. "Everything must be changed." Zainabu froze. "Beau office, right?" Mariata continued. "You said you have access to the records." There was a pause. Then she laughed softly. "Good. Very good." Zainabu's heart started beating fast. She leaned closer. "I don't want her name anywhere," Mariata said. "Not on the land papers. Not on the house. Not on anything." Zainabu felt like the ground was moving under her feet. "Erase Zainabu Kamara completely," Mariata added. "Make it look like my husband left everything to me." Another pause. "Yes, I know it's risky," Mariata whispered. "That's why I'm paying you well. Don't worry. No one will find out." Zainabu's hands began to shake. So this was the plan. They were trying to steal everything. "Tomorrow, I'll send you the documents," Mariata said. "Old copies, signatures, everything. Just fix it. Fix it." Like her life was just a mistake that could be deleted. Mariata ended the call and walked back inside, still smiling, like nothing had happened. Zainabu quickly returned to the sink and pretended to wash plates again. Her mind was racing. So her stepmother was working with a corrupt clerk in Bo, someone who had access to land and property records. Someone who could change names, dates, and ownership with one stamp. With one lie, Zainabu's name could disappear. Her father's legacy could be stolen. Her future could be destroyed. That night, she could not sleep. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. Every word Mariata said kept replaying in her head. "Erase her completely. Make it look like everything is mine." Tears rolled down her face, but she wiped them quickly. Crying would not save her. Begging would not help her. She remembered Mr. Conte's warning. Protect yourself first. Now she understood. This was not just cruelty anymore. This was war, and she would not lose. After hearing Mariata's secret plan, Zainabu became very careful. She stopped showing any emotion. She stopped looking sad. She stopped reacting to insults. Instead, she acted like she had given up on life. Every morning, she woke up early, swept the compound, washed clothes, and cooked when she was told. She spoke softly. She kept her eyes down. To Mariata, she now looked weak. And that was exactly what Zainabu wanted. One day, she gathered courage and said quietly, "Auntie, I want to look for small work. I don't want to depend on you." Mariata looked surprised, then, "Work," she mocked. "You. Who will employ you?" But she waved her hand. "Do whatever you want. Just don't disturb me." Zainabu thanked her and walked away. Inside, she smiled. A week later, she got a job at a small bookstore near Lumley Beach. It was a quiet place with wooden shelves, old books, and the smell of paper and dust. Tourists sometimes came. Students came too. The owner, an old man named Uncle Musa, was kind. He paid her little, but he paid her honestly. Every morning, Zainabu walked long distances to save transport money. Sometimes her shoes were worn out. Sometimes she was tired, but she never complained. After work, she hid her small salary inside a secret bag under her mattress. She never used it for clothes or makeup. Every coin was saved. She also opened a quiet account with Mr. Conte's help, using a different address and phone number. No one in the house knew. At home, she acted poor on purpose. If Mariata asked, "Do you have money?" Zainabu would shake her head. "No, Auntie. I'm struggling." If relatives visited, she wore old clothes and stayed in the kitchen. "She's suffering," Mariata would tell them proudly. "She doesn't know how to manage life." Zainabu would nod and agree. "Yes, Auntie, I'm nothing without you." But in her heart she laughed. Mariata thought she had won. She thought Zainabu was broken. She thought Zainabu had no power, no support, no future. She was wrong. Every day at the bookstore, Zainabu read about business, law, and finance. She learned quietly. She asked Uncle Musa questions. She listened more than she spoke. She was building herself. Slowly, silently, like a storm gathering strength in the sky. And when the time came, everyone would feel it. The engagement party was held at a big hotel in Aberdeen, with bright lights, soft music, and expensive decorations. White and gold flowers covered the tables. Waiters moved around with trays of drinks. Everyone was dressed in their best clothes, smiling and taking pictures. Zainabu stood near the wall, wearing a simple blue dress she had owned for 3 years. She had washed and ironed it carefully. Her hair was neatly tied back. No makeup, no jewelry, just her quiet self. She did not belong there. At least, that was how people made her feel. Mariatu arrived like a celebrity. She wore a shiny lace gown and high heels. Gold bracelets covered her wrists. She greeted everyone loudly, laughing and showing off. "My daughter is engaged," she kept saying proudly, even though it was her niece. She pulled Zainabu along with her to join a group of relatives and friends. "Come, come," she said. "Let them see you too." Zainabu followed, nervous. People were talking about phones, cars, businesses, and travel. One woman asked casually, "Zainabu, what phone are you using now?" Before Zainabu could answer, Mariata burst out laughing. "Phone," she repeated loudly. "This girl doesn't even own a phone." Everyone turned to look. "She still borrows mine to make calls," Mariata continued. "Imagine, in this modern time." Some people laughed. Others smiled awkwardly. Zainabu felt her face burn. Mariata was not done. "How will she survive in life?" she added dramatically. "No phone, no job, no money. Just moving around like a lost child." More laughter followed. "Poor girl," someone whispered. "Such a shame," another said. Zainabu wanted to disappear. Her hands were shaking. Her throat was tight. She kept her eyes on the floor, pretending not to care. Inside, she was hurting deeply. They did not know she chose not to use expensive phone. They did not know she had access to millions. They did not know she was planning her future carefully. To them, she was just the poor, useless girl. Mariata felt proud. She had succeeded. She had made Zainabu look small in front of everyone. She smiled and lifted her glass. "To family," she said loudly. Zainabu forced a small smile. She whispered to herself in her heart, "Laugh now. Enjoy it, because soon you will be silent." A few days after the engagement party, Mariatu was still angry. She felt embarrassed. Some relatives had started asking questions. Why is Zainabu always struggling? Doesn't her father leave anything for her? Why is she working in a small bookstore? Those questions annoyed her. One morning, she called Zainabu into the living room. "Get dressed," Mariata said sharply. "We are going to the bank." Zainabu looked surprised. "The bank?" "Yes," Mariata replied. "We will close that useless account your father opened for you. It's probably empty anyway." Zainabu lowered her head. "Okay, auntie," she said softly. Inside, her heart was beating fast. She knew what was coming. They entered one of the biggest banks in Freetown. The building was tall and shiny. Cold air from the air conditioner touched their faces. Security guards stood at the door. Mariata walked in confidently, like she owned the place. Zainabu followed quietly behind her. At the counter, Mariata spoke loudly. "My daughter wants to close her account," she said. "It has nothing inside. We are tired of maintaining it." The teller typed something into the computer. Her eyes widened. She blinked. She typed again. Then she stood up quickly. "Please, one moment," she said nervously. "Let me call the manager." Mariata frowned. "Why?" she asked. "It's just a small account." The teller rushed away. Minutes later, a well-dressed man in a suit walked out. He smiled widely when he saw Zainabu. "Miss Kamara," he said warmly. "Welcome." Everyone turned to look. Mariata froze. "Sir," the manager continued, "we've been expecting you. Please come to my office." Zainabu looked confused on purpose. "Oh, okay," she said quietly. They followed him into a private glass office. He offered Zainabu a soft chair and bottled water. "Your father was one of our most respected clients," he said kindly. "And now you are." He turned the computer screen toward them. On it was a big number, $50 million. Mariata's eyes almost came out. "W what?" she whispered. The manager smiled. $50 million, he said clearly, in trusts and fixed accounts. All under Miss Zainabu Kamara's name. The room went silent. No sound, no breath, no movement. Mariata's mouth was open, but no words came out. Zainabu looked at the screen calmly, like she was seeing it for the first time. "Oh," she said softly, "so it's still there." The manager laughed politely. "Still there?" "It's growing," he replied. Outside the glass walls, staff members were staring. Some were whispering, "Is that her? She's so young. That money is huge." Mariata's hands were shaking. The girl she called useless, the girl she mocked, the girl she humiliated, was a millionaire. No, a multimillionaire. And in that moment, her world collapsed in silence. Zainabu had waited for this day quietly, but inside she felt a storm of determination. She walked into the courthouse in Freetown wearing a sharp black suit, her hair tied back neatly. She looked confident, calm, and ready. Mariata sat in the front row, her expensive dress trembling slightly, her hands clutching her purse like a lifeline. The courtroom was packed. Relatives, neighbors, and journalists had come to watch the drama unfold. Whispers ran through the crowd. Is this the girl Mariata humiliated? She's so young. Zainabu's lawyer, Mr. Sori Conte, presented the case clearly. He laid out every piece of evidence. The sealed documents from her father, the banking records showing the $50 million, and most importantly, the secret recordings and witness statements proving Mariata had tried to forge documents and erase Zainabu's name from property records. Mariata's face went pale as the court played the recordings of her plotting with the corrupt clerk. Every lie, every plan to steal Zainabu's inheritance, every cruel whisper was exposed in front of everyone. She tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but her words sounded weak, empty, and fake. The judge leaned forward. This is a serious case of forgery and fraud, he said firmly. You have attempted to steal properties and funds that legally belong to your stepdaughter. Mariata's lawyer stumbled over papers, trying to find something to say, but the evidence was overwhelming. Witness after witness confirmed the story. The forgeries, the lies, the bribes, all laid bare. Finally, the judge passed the sentence. All properties in question are hereby returned to Miss Zainabu Kamara. Mariata Kamara is charged and held responsible for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of inheritance. Seizure of her assets is authorized immediately. A hush fell over the courtroom. Zainabu's relatives looked stunned. Some whispered apologies. Some avoided eye contact. Mariata sat frozen, staring at the floor. Zainabu took a deep breath. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had been mocked, humiliated, and pushed aside, but justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt brighter. People whispered her name with respect. The young girl who was once seen as powerless had not only survived but had won. And from that day on, no one would ever dare to underestimate Zainabu Kamara again. After the courtroom victory, Zainabu Kamara's life changed completely, but she didn't waste time celebrating. She had a bigger mission now. She wanted to use her wealth and power to make a real difference in Sierra Leone. Her first project was education. She remembered the children in small towns who had no schools, no books, and no hope. In Makini, she built a modern school with classrooms, a library, and computers. Teachers were trained and well paid, and every child received uniforms and meals. Soon after, she started another school in Kenema, making sure that even girls from poor families could attend without worry. Education was just the beginning. Zainabu knew women faced extra challenges in business and technology. She wanted to change that. With a team of experts, she launched a women's tech fund, offering grants, mentorship, and training to young women who wanted to start businesses in technology, digital services, and innovations. Slowly, women in Sierra Leone began breaking barriers and thriving in fields that were once almost impossible. While working tirelessly, Zainabu also grew her father's investments. She bought new businesses, invested in mining, telecommunications, and real estate, always with an ethical approach. People started to notice her skill, her vision, and her courage. She wasn't just rich. She was respected, admired, and feared by competitors for her intelligence and strategy. Soon, international media took notice. Forbes Africa published a special feature on her. The headline read, Zainabu Kamara, from silent girl to Sierra Leone's youngest business queen. The article highlighted her journey, from the poor, quiet girl living under a cruel stepmother to a multimillionaire using her wealth to empower communities and women across the country. Everywhere she went, people whispered her name with respect. Young girls in the schools she built looked up to her. Women in tech thanked her for believing in them. Investors sought her advice. And even former enemies, including Mariatu, realized she was untouchable, not because she had money, but because she had vision, patience, and heart. Zainabu smiled quietly every morning as she looked over her growing empire. She had survived humiliation, cruelty, and betrayal. She had stayed silent when needed, learned when needed, and acted when it mattered most. From that moment on, Zainabu Kamara wasn't just a survivor. She was a queen, one who ruled with intelligence, courage, and a mission bigger than herself. Years had passed since the courtroom victory. Zainabu Kamara had grown into a powerful woman, respected, wealthy, and unstoppable. She traveled the world, built businesses, supported schools, and mentored young women. But despite her success, she never forgot the pain Mariata had caused her. One afternoon, Mariatu appeared at her office, trembling, eyes red, voice shaking. Zainabu, please, she whispered. I was wrong. I beg you forgive me. Zainabu looked at her stepmother calmly. The woman who had insulted her, humiliated her, and tried to steal everything from her now stood small and desperate. Around them, staff watched quietly, sensing the tension. Mariata took another step forward, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry, she begged again, her voice breaking. Zainabu stayed silent for a moment, letting the words sink in. She remembered every insult, every attempt to erase her, every cruel laugh at the engagement party. She remembered the pain and the fear. Then she spoke. Her voice was steady, clear, and strong. You tried to break me when I was silent. You thought I had no power. You thought I was nothing. Mariata bowed her head, ashamed, unable to speak. Zainabu smiled softly, almost sadly. Now you hear me because I survived. Not just survived. I thrived. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked toward the hangar. Outside, her private jet gleamed in the sunlight. The engines purred softly, ready for takeoff. Staff greeted her respectfully as she walked down the steps, her posture straight, her presence commanding. Mariata remained frozen in place, realizing she had lost. Zainabu had not only survived every attempt to destroy her, she had become a queen in her own right. As Zainabu stepped onto the jet, she glanced back just once, her eyes calm but full of quiet power. Then she lifted off, leaving behind the past, leaving behind the cruelty, and taking her destiny into the skies. No one would ever silence her again.